Tell us a little bit about the agenda pack. You know, what I
Yeah.
love is that you're making sure that we are fighting back against people who are fighting back against us, and that's
Mm.
one thing I get on these airwaves, that we want fighters in the Democratic Party. So give us some details of the agenda pack.
Yeah, so I would tell you, Clarence Thomas's decision, the whole decision that came out in Dobbs, really changed everything. Not only did we get the gut punch of Roe being overturned, which transformed instantly the lives of women and birthing folks all across the country, but then you had Clarence Thomas lay out this concurrent opinion where, in explicit, gruesome detail, he made clear the rights and the freedoms that he wanted to go after next.
Mm.
And in two of the cases that he mentioned, that target was squarely aimed at the LGBTQ community. One in terms of marriage equality, and then the second in terms of Lawrence v. Texas, which allowed for consenting adults to live their life. And we're in a position right now where you see not only a radical, extreme Supreme Court that is out of touch with the American people, that's completely flying in the face of any jurisprudence. But you also see a lot of elected officials who it is becoming in vogue again to go after the LGBTQ community.
Mm.
It is, it's easy for you to now get media headlines if you attack trans kids and families. And you know what? As marginalized folks, there's often this backhanded praise that you get when you can just take the beating, right? Like, oh, look how they
Mm.
still are happy, even as these people continue to attack us every which way. Like, no, we're not just going to take it. We are going to fight back. And in this instance, there's some really awful, monstrous folks who are running for office who we need to stop. And Agenda PAC is going to help make a difference in some key races.
And you know, one thing I say, Malcolm and Reese, you've said this too. So these people who push anti-LGBT policies, they have interesting bedfellows. Because of
Mm.
course we know there are plenty black folks who are LGBT, but they also push anti-black policies. The,
Mm-hmm.
the same folks who are pushing against policies of trans kids and trans people, they're the same folks pushing against these critical race theory, banning black history. I want us to all, because I know we have some diverse listeners, but I want you to understand that it's all interconnected. They don't just
Mm-hmm.
stop at one group. You know, it all goes together. This parental legislation, it's all kind of, it's all woven. And I wonder if you could talk about how you've seen in Congress how these policies are woven in, Malcolm, and how they don't just stop with one group.
Reverend Barber, somebody who is a giant to me and should be for all of us, he says something I'll never forget. If the people who you just laid out so masterfully, Clay, if those people are cynical enough to work together to advance their goals, then we ought to be smart enough to stand together in the face of this hatred. Because at the end of the day, it's all fruit of the same poison tree. This idea that there's only one or two ways to exist in the world, that if you have enough wealth and enough social capital, if you're in the right caste, then you can look down on people who are different, who are beautiful just as they are. And what is so true is that when you see the erosion of core fundamental human rights like Roe, we need to be clear, as tough as the history in this nation has been, we've never had the court say, you know what, no, I'm taking us backwards. We've never had the court say, you know what, you're going to have fewer rights in the next 50 years than you did in the previous 50 years. And so the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? Republicans have, a real advantage in terms of having vehicles which are engaged in the type of targeted, effective communication. That means digital, that means TV, that means radio, that means direct mail. And sometimes when you are not the campaign, you can come a little bit harder. You can say things that the campaigns might not necessarily want
Hmm.
to say, but things that need to be said. And that
That's
is
Reese.
the position that you're in.
Hello.
We're going to say the things that should be said that sometimes people don't want to say.
That's what
Reese,
we
you have a
need.
question.
Yeah, so is this focused on specific gubernatorial races? What exactly is the focus, and how many states are you guys targeting with this pack?
Yeah, so this is a national effort. Knowing how close this upcoming election is, we're a little bit, we're focused on a few targets this time, but we're going to be, this is just the beginning of this, and so you can expect that we're going to be engaged in the next election when you have whoever on the Republican side tries to run against President Biden and calling him out, especially if it's somebody like a Ron DeSantis. And so when you look at our board, I'm chairing the board, but you also have Chevron Jones from Florida.
Love that brother.
Board as well. Megan Hunt from Nebraska. And if people don't know Megan Hunt, they should look her up. She's almost single-handedly stopped Nebraska from having a statewide abortion ban. And we have so many other incredible people who are going to be coming on, joining the board. And in terms of our targets, first and foremost, this, Pennsylvania is the center of the political universe. We tend to be every minute you look up, something critical is happening in Pennsylvania. And Doug Mastriano is somebody who is so racist, so misogynistic, so awful, not just in his rhetoric, but in the things that he has actually done in his life, that even as we looked nationwide, it made a lot of sense that we started here in Pennsylvania, but we're also looking at congressional races in California, in Ohio, and Maryland.
Can confirm about Doug Mastriano because he's in both of my books. Okay. And
yes,
he
wrote about him.
Against abortion, even in the case of saving a mother's life. That's how extreme on abortion he is. And he actually wrote a bill, or he sponsored a bill when he was a state senator, for a so-called, I don't like calling it the heartbeat bill, but a so-called heartbeat bill. So he's very extreme. And he was just in a Confederate uniform in 2014. Like, who does that? Like, this ain't like the 70s. In 2014, he was posing in a Confederate uniform.
And Reese, he just responded to that because he does not take questions from the press. And thank you, Reese. He always got the receipts about his legislative record. And you're right, it's crazy. And people should copy your book, which is very good, by the way.
Thank you.
Doug just responded to that, even though he doesn't talk to the media. The media was able to follow him at a couple of events, and he opined that he only occasionally wears a Confederate uniform, and that it's Democrats who are tyrannical for calling him out for wearing Confederate uniform. He's like, who among us doesn't occasionally wear the Confederate uniform?
Yeah, he doubles down. Because he tried to say that it was Democrats, that the Democrats were the Confederates. That's what he tried to say too. So it's like,
but the Confederates, whatever. I mean, and also that's just basic history. Know your history post 1865. Yeah. How the Confederate, whatever. They don't know. This is why it's so important to have actual history. I got to ask you this, Malcolm. I'm from Philly. You know that, from West Philly, and you ran for a U.S. Senate, and John Fetterman won. And I had a couple friends tell me, Malcolm didn't win. I'm not voting. And I said, wait a minute now. Rep. Kenyatta would not want you to do that. It wasn't all about Rep. Kenyatta. It was about us collectively, and we need Philly to churn out. Yeah. So what do you say to people who have a narrative like that, especially in Philadelphia, our hometown, that might say, well, my guy didn't win, so I'm not going to vote?
I would say to everybody who's, supported me and continues to support me, I want to be clear about this. Me running for U.S. Senate was never about Malcolm. Elected office is a tool, right? It's one tool that we need to build communities where, particularly Black and Brown folks, where we get treated with a level of dignity, where we're able to exist in a space that's not of constant combat, but exist in a space of joy and peace and of happiness, and where our kids and our nieces and our nephews and our baby cousins can grow up in a world where some of the things that we experienced, where folks weren't able to buy that first home because they were redlined out of the community, where people like my mom have to decide between their prescription drugs and making sure we had food, where a lot of Black men who were my age and could be me are being murdered at our streets at alarming rates, and where pandemics like COVID or monkeypox have a disproportionate impact on Black and brown folks. At the end of the day, it's about how that tool gets used. And we had a fierce primary battle, but I've been going around campaigning for John because I know that in this campaign, we have a choice. Either John Fetterman's going to be our senator or Dr. Oz is going to be our senator. And I would ask for everybody, whether it's me or any other politician, we are human, we are fallible, we're going to always do something you don't like. But when it comes to elections, you're not judging that candidate against the almighty, you're judging them against the alternative. And the question is, who is going to make us, who's going to put us on a path where we're either going forward or backwards in reaching that goal of joyous, whole, healthy, safe Black communities? And I think that Dr. Oz would put us in reverse so fast that your damn head would spin. And I'll make this final point, because we've been talking about this a lot, not just the gun violence, but also the opioid crisis that is hitting folks of all different races and backgrounds. But where it has exploded is in a community in Kensington that is a primarily Black and Puerto Rican community and neighborhood. And you have a lot of families who can't afford to leave that community, but are terrified that their kids are walking outside where there's needles and people in that community that's not safe. Dr. Oz is more responsible for that than probably anybody running for Senate in this country right now. He made millions of dollars investing in companies and partnering with companies who directly contributed to the opioid crisis that's not only killing people who are suffering with substance abuse, but also destroying the quality of life for many Black and Hispanic folks across Philadelphia. And he did something a couple of months ago, where he came to Kensington, took pictures of people and said, look how, awful Philly is. And I just said to a reporter today, the next time he comes to KNA, hope he comes to fucking apologize, not to take advantage of a community that he does not give a damn about. And I will do everything in my power to make sure Dr. Oz never becomes senator. And that means I'm going to be voting for John Fetterman. And I hope that everybody else does as well.
Blue.